Chapter 10. The Raj Bludger. Since the disastrous episode of the Pyxes, Professor Lockhart had not brought live creatures to class. Instead, he read passages from his books to them and sometimes reenacted some of them more dramatic bits. He usually picked Harry to help him with the reconstructions. So far, Harry had been forced to play a simple Transylvanian villagers whom Lockhart had cured of the babbling curse, a yeti with a head cold and a vampire who had been able to eat anything except lettuce since Lockhart had dealt with them. Harry was hauled to the front of the class during their very next defense against the dark art lesson, this time acting a werewolf. If he hadn't had a very good reason for keeping Lockhart in a good mood, he would have refused to do it. Nice loud howl, Harry, exactly. And then, if you'll believe it, I pounced like this, slammed him to the floor, thus, with one hand, I managed to hold him down with my other. I put my wand to his throat. I then screwed up my remaining strength and performed the immensely complex Homer first charm. He let out a piteous moan. Go on, Harry, higher than that could. The fear vanished, the fangs stank, and he turned back into a man. Simple yet effective. And another village will remember me forever as the hero who delivered them from the monthly terror of werewolf attacks. The bell rang and Lockhart got to his feet. Homework. Compose a poem about my defeat on the Wag Wag werewolf. Signed copies of Magical Me to the author to the best one. The class began to leave. Harry returned to the back of the room where Ron and Hermione were waiting. Ready? Harry muttered. Wait till everyone gone, said Hermione nervously. All right. She approached Lockhart's desk, a piece of paper clutched tightly in her hand, Harry and Ron right behind her. Professor Lockhart, Hermione stammered. I want to get this book out of the library just for background reading. She held out a piece of paper, her hand shaking slightly. But the thing is, it's in a restricted section of the library, so I need a teacher to sign for it. I'm sure it will help me understand what you say in Gaddling with Calls about choke acting venom. Oh, Gadding with Calls, said Lockhart, taking the note from Harmony and smiling widely at her. Possibly my very favorite book. You enjoyed it? Oh, yes, said Harmony eagerly. So clever. The way you trapped that last one with the tea strainer. Well, I'm sure no one will mind me giving the best student of the year a little extra help, said Lockhart warmly, and he pulled out an enormous peacock quill. Yes, nice, isn't it? He said, mastering the revolt look on Ron's face. I usually save it for book signings. He scrawled an enormous loopy signature on the note and handed it back to Harmony. So, Harry, said Lockhart, while Harmony folded the note with fumbling fingers and slipped it into her bag. Tomorrow's the first Quidditch match of the season. I believe Gryffindor against Slytherin. Is it not? I hear you are a useful player. I was a seeker too. I was asked to try for a national squad, but preferred to dedicate my life to the eradication of the dark force. Still, I ever you feel the need for a little private training, don't hesitate to ask. Always happy to pass on my experience to less able players. He made an indistinct noise in his throat and then hurried off after Ron and Hermione. I don't believe it, he said as the three of them examined the signature on the note. He didn't even look at the book we wanted. That's because he is a brainless git, said Ron. But who cares? We have got what we needed. He is not brainless git, said Hermione shrilly, and they half ran towards the library. Just because he said you were the best student of the year, they dropped their voice as they entered the muffled stills of the library. Madam Peace, the librarian, was a thin, irritable woman who looked like an undeterred vulture. Most potent potions, she repeated suspiciously, trying to take the note from Hermione, and Hermione wouldn't let go. I was wondering if I could keep it, she said breathlessly. Oh, come on, said Ron, reaching it in from her gasp and thrusting it at Madame Pince. We'll get you another autobiography Lockhart will sign. Anything if you stand still long enough. Madame Pince held the note up to the light as though determined to detect a fog tree. But it passed the test. She stalked away between the lofty shelves and returned several minutes later carrying a large and moldy looking book. Harmony put it carefully into her bag and then left, trying not to walk too quickly to look too guilty. 5 minutes later, they were barricaded in a morning mattress out of order bathroom once again. Hermione had overridden Ron's objection by pointing out that it was the last place anyone in their right mind would go. So they were guaranteed some privacy. Morning Myrtle was crying noisily in her stall, but they were ignoring her, and she them. Hermione opened most potent potions carefully, and the three of them bent over the damp, spotted pages. It was clear from a glance why it belonged in the restricted session. Some of the potions had effect almost too gruesome to think about, and there were some very unpleasant illustrations which include a man who seemed to have been turned inside out and a witch sporting several extra pairs of arms about of her head. Here it is, said Hermione excitedly as she found the page headed the Polyjuice Potion. It was decorated with drawing of people halfway through transforming into other people. Harry sincerely hoped the artist had imagined the look of intense pain in their faces. This is the most complicated potion I have ever seen, said Harmony as they scanned the recipe. Lacewing flies, leech, flaxweed, and not grass, she murmured, running her finger down the list of ingredients. Well, they are easy though. They are in the student store cupboard. We can help ourselves. Oh, look, powdered horn of bicorn. Don't know where we are going to get that. Rare skin of boomslangs that will be tricky too, and of course a bit of whoever we want to change into. Excuse me, said Ron sharply. What do you mean a bit of whoever we are changing into? I'm drinking nothing with Crab's toenail in it. Hermione continued as though she hadn't heard him. We don't have to worry about that yet, though, because we add those bit last. Ron turned speechless to Harry, who had another worry. Do you realize how much we are going to have to steal, Harmony? Shredded skin of the bloom salang, that's definitely not in the student's cupboard. What are we going to do? Break into Snape's private store? I don't know if this is a good idea. Hermione shut the book with Snape. Well, if you two are going to chicken out, fine, she said. There were a bright pink patch on her cheek and her eyes were brighter than usual. I don't want to break rules, you know. I think threatening muggle born is far worse than brewing up a difficult potion. But if you don't want to find out if it's Malfoy, I'll go straight to Madame Pince now and hand the book back in. I never thought I had seen the day when you had be persuading us to break through, said Ron. Alright, we'll do it, but not on nails, okay? How long will it take to make anyway? Said Harry as Hermione looking happier. Open the book again. Well, since the Flexwix has got to be picked at the full moon and the last wing have got to be stewed for 21 days, I had say it will be ready in about a month. If we can't get all the ingredients, a month, said Ron. Malfoy could have attacked half the Muggle born in the school by then. But Hermione's eye narrowed dangerously again, and she added swiftly, "But it's the best plan we have got, so full steam ahead, I say." However, while Hermione was checking that the cost of cleared all of them to leave the bathroom, Ron muttered to Harry, "It will be a lot less hassle if you can just knock Malfoy off his broom tomorrow. Harry woke early on Saturday morning and lay for a while thinking about a coming quiz match. He was nervous mainly at the thought of what Wood would say if Gryffindor lost, but also at the idea of facing a team mounted on the fastest racing broom Gold could buy. He had never wanted to beat Slytherin so badly. After half an hour of lying there with his inside churning, he got up, dressed, and went down to breakfast early, where he found the rest of the Gryffindor team huddled at a long empty table, all looking uptight and not speaking much. As 11 o'clock approached, the whole school started to make its way down to Crute Stadium. It was a muggy sort of day, with a hint of thunder in the air. Ron and Hermione came hurried over to wish Harry good luck as he entered the locker room. The team pulled on their scattered Gryffindor's robe, then sat down to listen to Wood's usual pre-match prep talk. Slytherin has better broom than us, he began. No point denying it, but we have got better people on our broom. We have trained harder than they have. We have been flying in all weather. True, muttered George Wesley. I haven't been properly dry since August, and we are going to make them rue the day they let that little bit of smile. Malfoy, by his way onto their team, just having with emotion, would turn to Harry. It will be down to you, Harry. Show them that a seeker has to have something more than a rich father. Get to the snitch before Malfoy or die trying. Harry, because we have got to win today, we have got to. So no pressure, Harry, said Fred, winking at him. As they walked out onto the field, a roar of noise greeted them, mainly cheer because Ravenclaws and Hufflepuff were anxious to see Slytherin beaten. The Slytherin in the crowd made their and his Madam Hooch, the Quidditch teacher, asked Flynn and Wood to shake hands. They did, giving each other threatening stares and gripping rather harder than necessary. My whistle, said Madam Hooch. 3, 2, 1. With a roar from the crowd to speed up upward, the 14th player rose towards the leaden sky. Harry flew higher than any of them, squinting around for the snitch. All right, there, scarehead, yelled Malfoy, shooting underneath him as though to show off the speed of his broom. Harry had no time to reply. At that very moment, a heavy black bludger came pelting toward him. He avoided it so narrowly that he felt it ruffle his hair as it passed. Close one, Harry, said George, streaking past him with his club in his hand, ready to knock the bludger back towards a Slytherin. Harry saw George give the bludger a powerful whack in the direction of Adrien Pussy. Bludger changed direction in midair and shot straight for Harry again. Harry dropped quickly to avoid it, and George managed to hit it hard towards Malfoy. Again, the bludger severed like a broom merge and shot at Harry's head. Harry put on a burst of speed as zoomed towards the other end of the field. He could hear the bludger whistling aloud behind him. What was going on? Bludger never concentrate on one player like this. It was their job to try and unseat as many people as possible. Fred Wesley was waiting for the bludger at the other end. Harry ducked as Fred swung at the bludger with all his might. The bludger was knocked off course. Coach, Fred yelled happily. But he was wrong. As though it was magnetically attracted to Harry, the bludger pelted after him once more, and Harry was forced to fly off at full speed. It had started to rain. Harry felt heavy drop fall onto his face, splattering onto the grass. He didn't have a clue what was going on in the rest of the game until he heard Lee Jordan, who was commentating, say Slytherin lead 60 points to 0. The Slytherin's superior broom were clearly doing their jobs, and meanwhile, the mad Bludger was doing all it could to knock Harry out of the air. Fred and George were now flying too close to him on either side that Harry could see nothing at all except their failing arm and had no chance to look for the snitch, let alone catch it. Someone's tampered with this bludger, Fred grunted, swinging his bat with all his might at its launch a new attack on Harry. We need time out, said George, trying to signal to Wood and stop the bludger breaking Harry's nose at the same time. Wood had obviously got the message. Madam Hooch's whistle rang out and Harry, Fred and George dived for the ground, still trying to avoid the mad bludger. Going on, said Wood as the Gryffindor team huddled together while slithering in the crowd cheered. We are being flattered. Fred, George, were you when the bludger stopped Angelina's scoring? We were 20 feet above her, stopping the other bludger from murdering Harry. Oliver, said George angrily. Someone is fixing it. It won't leave Harry alone. It hasn't gone for anyone else all games. The Slytherin must have done something to it. But the bludger have been locked in Madam Hooch's office since our last practice. And there was nothing wrong with them then, said Wood anxiously. Madam Hooch was walking toward them over her shoulder. Harry could see the Slytherin team jeering at pointing in his direction. Listen, said Harry as she came nearer and nearer. With you two flying around me all the time, the only way I'm going to catch the snitch is if it flies up my sleeves. Go back to the rest of the team and let me deal with the Raj one. Don't be thick, said Fred. I'll take you head off. Wood was looking from Harry to the Weasley. Oliver, this is insane, said Alicia Spinnet angrily. You can't let Harry deal with that thing on his own. Let's ask for an inquiry. If we stop now, we'll have to forfeit the match, said Harry. And we are not losing to Slytherin just because of the crazy bludger. Come on, Oliver. Tell them to leave me alone. This is all your fault, George said angrily to Wood. Get the snitch or die trying. What a stupid thing you tell him. Madam Hooch had joined them. Ready to resume play? She asked Wood. Wood looked at the determined look on Harry's face. All right, he said. Fred, George, you heard Harry. Leave him alone and let him deal with the bludger on his own. The rain was falling more heavily now. On Madam Hooch's whistle, Harry kicked harder into the air and heard the telltale whoosh of the bludger behind him. Higher and higher Harry climbed. He looked and swooped, sprawling, zigzagging, and rolled slightly dizzy. He nevertheless kept his eyes wide open. Rain was picking his glasses and ran up his nostrils as he hung upside down, avoiding another fire diving from the bludger. He could hear laughter from the crowd. He knew he must look very stupid, but the bludger was heavy and couldn't change direction as quickly as Harry could. He began a kind of roller coaster ride around the edge of the stadium, squinting through the silver sheet of the rain to the Gryffindor goal post where Adrien Pussy was trying to get past Wood. A whistle in Harry's ear told him the bludger had just missed him again. He turned right over the speed in the opposite direction, training for the ballet. Potter yelled Malfoy as Harry was forced to do stupid kind of twirl in midair to dodge the bludger. He flew. The bludger trailed a few feet behind him and then, glaring back at Malfoy in hatred, he saw it. The golden snitch. It was hovering inches above Malfoy's left ear, and Malfoy, busy laughing at Harry, hadn't seen it. For an agonizing moment, Harry hung in mid-air, not daring to speak toward Malfoy in case he looked up and saw the snitch. Wham! He had stayed still a second too long. The bludger had hit him at last, smashed into his elbow, and Harry felt his arm break. Dimly dazed by the searing pain in his arm, he slid sideways on his rain-drenched broom, one knee still crooked over it, his right arm dangling useless at his side. The bludger came pelting back for a second attack, this time aiming at his face. Harry swerved out of the way, one idea firmly lodged in his numb brain: get to Malfoy. Oh, haze of rain and pain he divided from the shimmering, sneering face below him and saw its eyes widen with fear. Malfoy thought Harry was attacking him. What the he gasped, tearing out of Harry's way. Harry took his remaining hand off his broom and made a wild snatch. He felt his finger close and a cold snitch, but was now only gripping the broom with his legs, and there was a yell from the crowd below as he held it straight for the ground, trying hard not to pass out. With a splattering thud, he hit the mud and rolled off his broom. His arm was hanging at a very strange angle. Riddled with pain, he heard, as though from a distance, a good deal of whistling and shouting. He focused on the snitch clutch in his gold hand. Ah, he said vaguely, we have won, and he fainted. He came around, rain falling on his face, still lying on the field, with someone leaning over him. He saw glitter of teeth. Oh no, not you, he moaned. Doesn't know what he is saying, said Lockhart loudly to the anxious crowd of Gryffindor pressing around them. Not to worry, Harry. I am about to fix your arm. No, said Harry. Keep it like this, thanks. He tried to sit up, but the pain was terrible. He heard a familiar click noise nearby. I don't want a photo of this, Colin, he said loudly. Lie back, Harry, said Lockhart soothingly. It's a simple charm I have used countless times. Why can't I just go to the hospital wing? Said Harry through clenched teeth. He should really, Professor, said a muddy wood who couldn't help grinning even though his seeker was injured. Great capture, Harry, really spectacular. Your best you had done. Through the thicket of legs around him, Harry spotted Fred and George Weasley whistling the Roach bladder into a box. It was still putting off a terrified flight. Stand back, said Lockhart, who was rolling up his jade green sleeves. No, don't, said Harry weakly, but Lockhart was twirling his wand, and a second later and had direction it straight at Harry's arm. A strange and unpleasant sensation started at Harry's shoulder and spread all the way down to his fingerprints. It felt as though his arm was being deflated. He didn't dare look at what was happening. He had shut his eyes, his face turned away from his arm, but his worst fear were realized as the people above him gasped and Colin Creevy began clicking away madly. His arm didn't hurt anymore, nor did it feel remotely like an arm. Oh, said Lockhart, yes, well, that can something happen. But the point is, the bones are no longer broken. That's the thing to bear in mind. So Harry just toddled up to the hospital wing. Oh, Mr. Weasley, Miss Granger, would you escort him? And Madame Pomfrey will be able to um, tidy you up a bit. As Harry got to his feet, he felt strangely lopsided. Taking a deep breath, he looked down at his right side. What he saw nearly made him pass out again. Poking out the end of his robe what looked like a thick, flesh-colored rubber glove. He tried to move his finger. Nothing happened. Lockhart hadn't mended Harry's bone. He had removed them. Madame Malfoy wasn't at all pleased. You should have come straight to me, she ragged, holding up the sad limp reminder of what half an hour before had been a working arm. I can mend bones in a second, but growing them back, you will be able to, won't you? Said Harry desperately. I'll be able to, certainly, but it will be painful, said Madame Pomfrey grimly. Throwing Harry a pair of pajamas, you'll have to stay the night. Hermione waited outside the curtain drawn around Harry's bed while Ron helped him into his pajamas. It took a while to stuff the rubbery boneless arm into a sleeve. How can you stick up for Lockhart now? Hermione, Ron called through the curtain as he pulled Harry's limp finger through the cuff. Harry had wanted deboning. He was would have asked. Anyone can make a mistake, said Hermione, and it doesn't hurt anymore. Does it, Harry? No, said Harry, getting into bed, but it doesn't do anything else either. As he swung himself onto the bed, his arm flapped pointless. Hermione and Madame Pomfrey came around the curtain. Madame Pomfrey was holding a large bottle of something labeled Skelgro. You are in for the rough night, she said, pouring out a steaming big full and handing it to him. Regrowing bronze is a nasty business. So was taking the scale grow. It burned Harry's mouth and throat as it went down, making him cough and splutter. Still stuttering about dangerous sport and in-depth teachers, Madame Pomfrey retreated, leaving Ron and Hermione to help Harry gulp down some water. We won, though, said Ron, a grin breaking across his face. That was some catch you made, Malfoy's face. He looked ready to kill. I want to know how he fixed that bludger, said Hermione darkly. We can add that to the list of questions we'll ask him when we have taken the polyjuice potion, said Harry, sinking back into his pillow. I hope it tastes better than this stuff. If it's got bit of Slytherin in it, you have got to be joking, said Ron. The door of the hospital wing burst open at that moment, gritty and soaking wet. The rest of the Gryffindor team had arrived to see Harry. Unbelievable flying, Harry, said George. I have just seen Marcus Flinch yelling at Malfoy. Something about having the snitch on top of his head and not noticing Malfoy didn't seem too happy. They had brought cakes, sweets, and bottle of pumpkin juice. They gathered around Harry's bed and were just getting started on what promised to be a good party when Madame Pomfrey came storming over, shouting, "This boy needs rest. He's got 33 bone to regrow. Out, out!" And Harry was left alone with nothing to distract him from the stabbing pain in his limb. Hours and hours later, Harry woke quite sudden in the pitch blackness and gave a small yelp of pain. His arm now felt full of large splinters. For a second, he thought that was what had woken him. Then, with a third of horror, he realized that someone was pounding his forehead in the dark. "Get off," he said loudly, and then Dobby, the house elf, goggling tennis ball eyes, were peering at Harry through the darkness. A single tear was running down his long pointed nose. Harry Potter came back to school, he whispered miserably. Dobby warned and warned Harry Potter. Sir, why didn't you need Dobby? And didn't Harry Potter go back home when he missed the trip? Harry heaved himself up on his pillow and pushed Dobby's sponge away. "What you are doing here?" he said, "and how did you know I missed the trip?" Dobby's lip trembled and Harry was seized by a sudden suspicion. "It was you," he said slowly. "Stop the barrier from letting us go?" "Indeed, yes, sir," said Dobby, nodding his head vigorously, ear flapping. Dobby hid and watched for Harry Potter answering the gateway, and Dobby had to iron his hand afterward. He showed Harry 10 long bandaged fingers, but Dobby didn't care, sir. Sure, he thought Harry Potter was safe, and never did Dobby dream that Harry Potter would get to school another way. Dobby was so shocked when he heard Harry Potter was back at Hogwarts. He let his master "You nearly got Ron and me expelled," he said fiercely. "You had better get lost before my bone become back, Dobby, or I might strange you." Dobby smiled weakly. "Dobby is used to death threats, sir. Dobby get them 5 times in a day at home." He blew his nose on a corner of the fifty pillowcase he wore, looking so pathetic that Harry felt his anger ebb away in spite of himself. "Why do you wear that thing, Dobby?" he asked curiously. "This, sir," said Dobby, plucking at the pillowcase. This a mark of the house elves' enslavement, sir. Dobby can only be freed if his master present him with clothes, sir. The family is careful not to pass Dobby even a sock, sir, for then he would be free to leave their house forever. Dobby mocked his bulging eyes and said suddenly, Harry Potter must go home. Dobby thought his bludger would be enough to make. Your bludger, said Harry angrily, rising once more. What do you mean, your bludger? You made that bludger try to kill me? Not kill you, sir. Never kill you, said Dobby, shocked. Dobby want to save Harry Potter's life. Better sent home grievously injured than remain here, sir. Dobby only want Harry Potter hurt enough to be sent home. Oh, is that all? Said Harry angrily. I don't suppose you are going to tell me why you wanted me sent home in pieces. If Harry Potter only knew, Dobby groaned, more tears dripping out into his ragged pillowcase. If he knew what he meant to us, to the lowly, the enslaved, we drag of the magical world, Dobby remembered how it was when he who must not be named was at the height of his power, sir. The house elves were threatened like women, sir. Of course, Dobby is still threatened like that, sir. He admitted, drying his face on the pillowcase, but mostly, sir, life has improved for my kind since you triumphed over he who must not be named. Harry Potter survived and the Dark Lord's power has broken. And it was a new dawn, sir, and Harry Potter shone like a beacon of hope for those of us who thought the dark days would never end, sir. And now at Hogwarts, terrible things are to happen, are perhaps happening already. And Dobby cannot let Harry Potter stay here now that the history is to repeat itself. Now that the Chamber of Secret is open once more, Dobby froze, horror struck, then grabbed Harry's water jug from his bedside table and cracked it over his own head, robbing out of sight. A second later, he crawled back onto the bed, cross-eyed, muttering, "Bad Dobby, very bad Dobby." "So there is a chamber of secret," he whispered. "And did you say it's been opened before? Tell me, Dobby." He seized the elf's bone wrist as Dobby's hand inched toward the water jug. "But I am not muggle born. How can I be in danger from the chamber?" "Sir, ask no more of poor Dobby," stammered the elf, his eyes hugged in the dark. "Dark deeds are planned in this place, but Harry Potter must not be here when they happen. Go home, Harry Potter, go home, Harry Potter must not meddle in this, sir. It's too dangerous." "Who is it, Dobby?" Harry said, keeping a firm hold on Dobby's wrist to stop him from hitting himself with the water jug again. "Who's opened it? Who opened it last night?" "Dobby can't, sir." "Bob can't. Dobby mustn't tell me." Squealed the elf. "Go home, Harry Potter, go home." "I'm not going anywhere," said Harry furiously. "One of my best friends is muggle born. She'll be the first in line if the chamber really has been opened." Harry Potter risked his own life for his friend, mourned Dobby in a kind of miserable ecstasy. So noble, so valiant. But he must save himself, he must. Harry Potter must not. Dobby suddenly froze, his bat ears quivering. Harry heard it too. There were footsteps coming down the passageway outside. "Dobby must go," Britain the elf, terrified. There was a loud crack, and Harry's first was suddenly clean to thin air. He slumped back into bed, his eye on dark doorway to the hospital wing as the footsteps drew nearer. The moment Dumbledore was backing into the dormitory wearing a long wool dressing gown and a nightcap. He was carrying one end of what looked like a statue. Professor McGonagall appeared a second later, carrying his feet. Together they heaved it into a bed. "Get Madame Pomfrey," whispered Dumbledore, and Professor McGonagall hurried past the end of Harry's bed out of sight. Harry lay quite still, pretending to be asleep. He heard urgent voice, and then Professor McGonagall swept back into view, closely followed by Madame Pomfrey. who was pulling a cardigan and over her nightdress. He heard a sharp instinct of breath. What happened, Madame Pomfrey whispered to Dumbledore, bending over the statue on the bed. Another attack, said Dumbledore. Minerva found him on the stairs. There was a bunch of grapes next to him, said Professor McGonagall. We think he was trying to sneak up here to visit Potter. Harry's stomach gave a horrible lurch. Slowly and carefully he raised himself a few inches so he could see at the statue on the bed. A ray of moonlight lay across its staring face. It was Colin Creevy. His eyes were wide and his hands were stuck up in front of him holding his camera. Petrified, whispered Madame Pomfrey. Yes, said Professor McGonagall. But I shuddered to think. If Albus hadn't been on the way downstairs for hot chocolate, who knows what might have. The three of them started down at Colin. Then Dumbledore leaned forward and wrenched the camera out of the Colin's ridge grip. You don't think he managed to get a picture of his attacker? Said Professor McGonagall eagerly. Dumbledore didn't answer. He opened the back of the camera. Good gracious, said Madame Pomfrey. A jet of steam had hissed out of the camera. Harry, 3 beats away, caught the acrid smell of burnt plastic. Melted, said Madame Pomfrey wonderingly. All melted. What does this mean? Albus, Professor McGonagall said urgently. It means, said Dumbledore, that the Chamber of Secrets is indeed open again. Madame Pomfrey clapped a hand to her mouth. Professor McGonagall's gaze stared at Dumbledore. But Albus, surely who? The question is not who, said Dumbledore, his eyes on Colin. The question is how. And from what Harry could see of Professor McGonagall's shadow face, she didn't understand this way any better than he did. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye bye.